When they said Extonic, oh my god, I've never been so excited in my entire life for a Doctor Who episode.
And I love iconic shit.
So do I.
Yeah, we're flagging that for later on, for sure.
Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Podcast. My name is Clara.
My name is Vendela.
And today we're going to be talking about the new episode, The Well. Are you excited?
I'm so excited. This episode is...
We obviously have a lot to talk about, but I think we should start by recapping the episode. And just like last time, we're actually going to have to put this on a timer because we are on the impossible planet. We are on a planet that is about to be propelled into a black hole. So we have to be quick.
I'm going to put on a 1 minute 30 seconds timer. I feel like you can do it.
Oh my god.
3, 2, 1, go.
Doctor and companion Belinda arrive on a desolate planet
400,000
years in the future. They join a military squad investigating a mining colony where all but one colonist have been mysteriously killed. Some have been killed by their neck snapping, and some have been killed by being shot in the back. The sole survivor, Elise, a deaf cook, reveals that an invisible, malevolent entity causes people to turn violent and transverse when someone kills its host. As fear and tension escalate, key characters die, and the team uncovers that the entity emerged from the planet's well. In a heartbreaking sacrifice, platoon leader Shia allows the entity to possess her and jumps into the well to save the others. The Doctor and Belinda return to the TARDIS, shaken but alive, and left pondering the mysterious entity's power. And right before the title sequence, we see that the entity actually didn't possess Belinda as they initially thought. It possessed someone else who actually was able to escape to the ship. The episode serves as a spiritual sequel to the 2008 episode Midnight.
You had 20 seconds left. You're so under time.
Oh, what the hell?
What was the first thing you immediately had to talk about?
Well, obviously the first thing I immediately have to talk about is the fact that both you and I are massive Midnight fans. I think it clears our top threes respectively.
I think maybe like 2 days before this episode, we were literally on a call talking about Midnight being like one of our favorite episodes.
And it's always one of those episodes that is the first one I show to a new person when I'm introducing them to Doctor Who. Always at the forefront of my mind as like some of the best writing the modern rendition of the show has ever had. So obviously we're going to be excited to see Midnight revisited. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because one of the greatest things about Midnight is that it's such a contained story. It is so enclosed. It's enclosed in this tiny space. The story is enclosed. It's extremely mysterious. And every time you go back to revisit such an episode, you run the risk of ruining the mystique of the villain. Do we think they succeeded, or do we think they kind of ruined the magic of the first one?
Just as you said, one of the strengths of Midnight is that the episode is so enclosed, and the fact that we don't know what it looks like, we don't know what it can do or like the limits of its powers. We still keep the fact that it's evolving, so that's why it's hard to recognize it, and that is like an element that brings more mystique to it, and it makes it scarier for sure. But when they run away from the character after showing its own reflection to itself, we get the scene where the Doctor looks at it and is like, I want to see it. I think that isn't really doing the entity any favors, really, because it makes it scarier to not know. And something they do to actually convey that during the episode for me was when they have this glaring siren sound. It completely took your focus off whatever was going on the screen, so it felt like you haven't even seen it, just like the characters themselves were like, no, it was nothing. I'm not sure how much visual impact there was, but the audio impact of it completely blinded me to whatever was going on. All in all, I think they captured the Midnight entity pretty well, like with fairness and to its own strengths by keeping it pretty anonymous. Like, of course, we added some attributes this time, and maybe you can speak more to that. However, the main focus of it still being it's playing, it's having fun, is still the same.
When a showrunner revisits a previous villain whose main feature is mystique and not being sure about the mechanics, that they will accidentally spoil that by showing too much. And I think that Russell T Davies is a lot more keyed in to what makes the entity in Midnight scary, as compared to Stephen Moffat being keyed into what makes the Weeping Angel scary. I will argue, though, that I think they did it pretty effectively. They didn't show any specifics, they didn't zoom into any features. We still don't know what it looks like, we still don't know anything about it. We just know that this is a very decrepit being with a lot of powers that are nondescript. They managed to keep enough mystique around the entity to be threatening. Now, they didn't actually have to show anything. Like, I thought that when he was looking straight past Elise in the scene right before they start running, I thought that he could see it because he was looking straight at something. I thought it would have been more effective if the Doctor could see it and we couldn't, because that would put us in the shoes of the other characters who are there and can see the impact of the entity but can't actually see it physically. So in the first Midnight episode, the entity knocks on the outside and then it manages to get in and it possesses people. And when it's possessing people, it copies what people are saying. So it starts by copying at a delay. Vendela, should we do a demonstration? You say something and I'll copy it.
Oh, I just say something?
I just say something?
I'm really good.
I'm not really good at... That's what it was like for an entire episode, which is obviously really creepy. And then it ends up picking the Doctor as like the most intelligent voice in the room, and instead of copying, it starts speaking at the exact same time, and then it starts flipping so that the Doctor is the one copying the entity. So the Doctor says that this entity is learning throughout this whole process, but the entity also seems to have an affinity for chaos and an affinity of scaring people so much that they start fighting and turning against each other. The mechanism seems to be this time around that the creature hides behind a person and scares the person watching so much that they want to kill them. And when they're dead, the entity transfers to the other person, which means that this cycle keeps going until everyone is dead except for Elise. And what Belinda figures out is that if you're straight behind midnight clockwise the person, the entity can actually grab onto you and throw you around. And that's why she says, don't go behind Elise. It's like it's hiding in a little pocket right behind Elise. Obviously, it wouldn't have been fun if they just copied the exact same mechanics from the first episode. It doesn't make sense. This is 400,000 years later in the timeline. I think the new mechanics are scary. Like, the jump scares were actually genuinely effective because I watched this episode on my own in the dark. I think it was cleverly executed. I like the little nod to it being midnight o'clock, and I think the new mechanics are effective and clever.
Yeah, I think I definitely jumped the shark a little going straight into the monster. Off the top of this review, I think actually what we should have mentioned is I think this episode is an episode of callbacks, and this can really encapsulate a lot of things. First of all, the first track we have playing in this episode is Toxic by Britney Spears. This is like a really standout moment from RT's original run. Also recognize some other callbacks, more callbacks than just having the Midnight Entity come back. Is when the Doctor is speaking to the entity on Elise's back, he says, "It knows my name," which is a very central theme from Stephen Moffat's era. But then I also thought it was kind of fun. I felt like it was a callback to have the creature sit on the person's back, because when we were introduced to the idea that the entity was sitting on her back, I immediately thought of Turn Left with Donna. And then I thought about it for a second and I was like, this doesn't really make sense. So it's probably not that. And I have to mention, when we were shown the planet in an overview of where they're going into, my first thought I said out loud, is that midnight? And I was like, okay, maybe it's not. It looks a bit like 2005 Doctor Who was rendered. So I was like, this seems like a bit of a callback. And because I was thinking about midnight, when the Doctor asks, like, what planet is this? And it's like 7675 or whatever the name of the planet is now. I said out loud, it is midnight. It is midnight. Because at that point, I'd already put the pieces together, but the fact that they put in these red herrings of like it's on your back, they changed the rules for the alien. Those things threw me off so much that I wasn't sure.
And also having that central mystery of why did it break the mirrors, it made you think of sort of weeping angels, or
Definitely.
because I remember, you might want to show screenshots from my from our text conversation, but when I was watching it, I was live reacting to Vendela because I was genuinely nervous about this episode. I knew that it had been well received, and I knew that I was gonna like it because I like this genre of Doctor Who episodes. But I'm always scared of being disappointed, so I was like texting Vendela as my comfort blanket. And when they said Extonic, oh my god, I've never been so excited in my entire life for a Doctor Who episode. Obviously I was scared, because I was scared they were gonna botch it, but I ended up being really pleasantly surprised.
I had already put those pieces together when they said it was a mining planet and the atmosphere was unlivable, but then they threw me off, so I called it, but then I uncalled myself.
And I think this is why it's good that we didn't watch any leaks ahead of time, because it makes us real time try to solve the mystery and try to see. This is similar to other things we've seen, but what is it actually? I think that process is so special and so fun. Like putting the pieces together and then being misled. That's one of those first time experience things that is really hard to replace. That feeling of like, oh my god, I know what this is my favorite episode of Doctor Who, but in the modern era, that excitement it's unique, it's special.
And also to plug ourselves a little bit, we were actually planning on recording a short podcast episode just about Doctor Who spoilers, so that's gonna come up very soon.
We'll plug it up in the corner, whichever side it is, so you can watch our little discussion on why spoilers are bad. I'm thinking that we should maybe talk about some other aspects of the episode. I have a general comment about Elise's character. The first part of the episode where I felt like, yeah, this is gonna be a good one, is when they meet Elise and she's super scared, and there's this tension between like, is she trustworthy, is she the one who killed everyone, and her also saying, yeah, I killed my friend, I did it, but listen, I had to. I think that's when I knew that this was going to be a banger, because already we're bringing in moral ambiguity, we're bringing in big mystique. What happened here? Why did everybody turn crazy and kill each other? And also we're playing with this idea that people inherently distrust people with disabilities. I think that's a very clever way of bringing in social commentary, but also having that very Doctor Who sci-fi play on humanity. Because I think what Midnight, the original episode, did so well is that it just really critiqued people. It really like put a magnifying glass on fear and what it does to people and how it causes us to turn against each other.
They have that moment where they declare red code as well.
Exactly. They have a moment where some members of the platoon don't trust the Doctor, and they decide to go against their platoon leader by declaring a code red. And that's another nod to the original Midnight episode, where people initially trust the Doctor and then decide that actually he's an alien, or he's not from here, or he's not part of this platoon, and I don't trust them, and I don't trust that this is the right thing to do. And using brute force and violence, aka the fact that they have guns and can kill people if they disagree, to their advantage to take control of the situation. And it really plays on this way of like how different people react under stress. Some people take to violence and take to controlling the situation and flushing out the evil, and some people try to breathe in, calm down, and problem solve.
The Doctor is really overt with his I come in peace, that's why I don't wear armor, and he's overstating over and over again that we're gonna solve this calmly, there's no need for violence. It's a point that he goes very, very hard on.
Exactly. Also really sells Belinda once again. I think the characterization is amazing, and I also like the little nods of like, what, a nurse who can't sign, that's supposed to be illegal, and the fact that she doesn't know all of the medical techniques that are being used in this era, but she still like is stubborn enough to want to do it herself. I think that's just, it speaks to her strength as a character.
On the topic of Ellis being deaf, being a part of the theme of the episode, as we noticed, it is not a central theme to the episode. It's more just a mechanic they have to account for in all the scenarios. It was also one of those little subversions that they had put in that we noticed very early on, that Elise is a deaf character, but she's also the only survivor, which makes you think, what about her deafness has made her safe this whole time? Because it is important, and I think it adds weight to the scariness of the Midnight entity, that because she was deaf, she had an easier time surviving with it on her back because she can't hear the whispering. For me, trying to figure out and put together, like, what is this type of villain? It was a piece of information that threw off a little bit, but then it ended up being so much cooler that it's just, no, it's whispering to her, but she can't hear it, so she doesn't realize it's on her back.
Yeah, well, she doesn't get seduced, and she doesn't get as scared as other people. She doesn't even know that it's on her back until people start reacting to it in real time. And I think that it's always slightly problematic when you have a character who's special in some way, like they are neurodivergent, or they have a disability, or they are a different race than what is usually on Doctor Who, and having that being like tie into the plot, because the only way you can ever have a deaf character in a show is if it's related to the plot somehow. It was subtle enough for it to be, yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense that the only deaf character on board is the one who survived. But they also kind of justified in other ways by having her being the cook, by having her being the weakest on board in terms of like education level, and having her be not a central character that the monster would have gone for first. But also choosing someone who is endearing, which makes it really difficult for people who land there to leave her. She's not a soldier. She doesn't have that suicidal instinct of like, I'll take my own life to protect the universe. She genuinely just wants to get home to her daughter, and the Doctor even says that's what the entity wants, and we cannot take you until this entity is off your back.
And there was another point about Alice's character that I'm not entirely sure about that I like. Maybe that was kind of the part they tried to justify with her being deaf and then really insisting that there's nothing on her back. But we're really far into the episode when we actually get to her revealing what actually happened. I get that she wouldn't be so forthcoming about, yeah, I murdered my own best friend.
But she does say that pretty quickly.
She does say it, but she could have... It's very reliant on revealing just enough information. It ruins the immersion a little bit. I'm also not sure why the video footage was corrupted. Like, I get that they unscrambled the footage and like they mended the deleted data or whatever they were doing with the Sonic. I like the fact that they brought back the Sonic to do something that doesn't really save the day. It's not a magic wand, but it does a little bit of magic. But the plot point in itself was a bit... I think it's a cool retro, like, or like callback to older themes of like, do the Sonic thing and it gives you just enough to start unraveling the mystery but not give you all the answers. I think it's a fun, I enjoy that kind of a watch. But if I think of it logically,
just to justify it, I think the reason maybe Alice isn't forthcoming with the information in the beginning is because it doesn't make any sense, and it won't make sense until people experience it themselves. And I think also that Alice is adamant on being taken home rather than solving the mystery, rather than protecting the universe from this entity. So I guess it does make sense on that plane. I think you need a couple of rewatches to feel like, is this like an inconsistency, or does this make sense for her character? I will say though that I think the scrambled video makes more sense than Alice not being forthcoming, and the reason is because the people who worked at the mine were terrified that something had come out of the well, and they were trying to shut down the production. So they had put a manual bolt on the whole system and intentionally scrambled all the footage because they didn't know what this entity was or how it spread or how it communicated. So I think that makes sense, that like one of the last things the technicians would do is try to stop anything that could possibly spread this thing from one place to another.
I think you're right about that. I didn't even consider that maybe the crew actually did that.
Well, there was a manual bolt in the system that she had to shoot off, and she even says this is a good old like manual shutdown of everything. And then the doctor manages to recover some of that information, and it makes sense to me that people who are terrified and don't know what they're facing would do something like that.
I feel like I will need some more rewatches to really see if I think it makes sense that Elise reveals the information at the point where she does, but I feel like maybe if she wanted to be as little forthcoming as possible in favor of being a sympathetic character, maybe it would make more sense that she didn't reveal anything at all. But I want to rewatch the episode to collect my thoughts on that a little bit more.
No, yeah, it's a fair point. Like, I reacted to that too, that she is forthcoming with some information. For instance, that people went crazy and that she had to kill her best friend. But she isn't forthcoming with the fact that there's an entity jumping from person to person.
I don't feel like they earned her revealing all of that information. It wasn't like a payoff in interaction with Elise, but she just reveals it at some point.
And once Belinda starts seeing the thing on her back, isn't that when you would immediately go in and be like, no, listen, there's nothing on my back, or there is something on my back, but it's just trying to drive you crazy, just to de-escalate a little bit.
Yeah, at that point she could have said, like, the thing broke the mirrors, or something like that.
Not to be a Moffat fan who goes in and write fan fiction about why the thing I like is actually good. I think that the fact that she's deaf and the fact that she feels victimized in this entire situation could contribute to her not being forthcoming. Like, it could be like her number one priority is to get home no matter what these people think. And also she misses information sometimes. Sometimes they turn their back on her, sometimes they don't speak directly to her, so maybe she doesn't trust these people, maybe she doesn't actually understand what they're even talking about. And it could also be the fact that she wants to get taken home regardless of if she's infected or not. And that's why she's not being forthcoming until it reaches the point that she's actually in mortal danger. Like, people are so scared of her that they might actually kill her. That's when she starts telling. I think maybe because she can't hear it, she kind of hopes that it's not on her, and maybe she'll get away with being taken home. Like, it could be something like that, and I'm sure that on a few rewatches it will make sense. But it is one of those things that sticks with you, that like, why wouldn't you just say that from the beginning to build trust? I guess that the whole point of the entity is that it erodes trust between people, and it makes people scared, and it makes people do things that aren't logical to save themselves.
And I don't think it compromised that feeling of what the episode was trying to communicate, so I think it's fair.
We'll have to do a couple of rewatches and see.
Oh, so a parallel mystery to this whole getting to know Elise, getting to know what happened on the base is a little nugget that I want to bring with me from this one, is that they didn't go very far into why it was gone, but it seems like it's gone more than in the previous nods to the fact that the Earth may be gone. They've shown this very like catastrophic destruction type scenario, and in this episode we more learned that it's been kind of erased, and it's more than just a catastrophic scenario. The Earth is gone. It's actually some type of plot going on, and I think that is very fun. I think it brings off the pressure from the show that the show is ending type of scenario. It brings more mystery, and I think it's fun. I like the way they're going at this point.
Yeah, because this is the first time we get an indication that the Earth isn't only physically exploded, it's actually being erased from the timeline. It doesn't exist in the consciousness of other species out in the universe.
Even though they're humans, right?
No, but they weren't humans. They were from...
But they're humanoid descents.
Yeah, they're humanoid, but remember at the end when she's like, do Earthlings have the heart do they have the same torso structure as our race? So they're different races.
Oh, yeah. I felt like maybe they just evolved from humans to become... Now I'm really unsure. But in the Robot Revolution, they were...
Vendela, they have different anatomy. They have a whole different organ in their body.
They weren't?
So they must be...
But they could have evolved from the same pre-species, couldn't they?
But it doesn't make sense for... it doesn't make sense for them to just evolve a different organ and not have, like, a kidney anymore.
But they could. That's evolution can work that way. I would have thought that maybe they were related, but you're right. Maybe they weren't.
No, it's okay, but it is interesting that this is the second time we see a humanoid creature that look exactly like humans, but actually are just aliens. And I wish they would have just made them like Silurians or something. Like, make them blue or something. Make them blue. Can we at least have an indication that we're watching Doctor Who and not like Star Wars? Like, I want them to not be humans. I want them to be special. Can we put some purple face paint on them?
Not that I'm a big fan of the... What? Do you not have any blue friends?
Oh yeah, the classic. I remember, because I rewatched some episodes from season 10, and they make that exact same joke in 2 separate episodes. They say it both in World Enough and Time. I had friends who were bluish. And also they say it in Oxygen when Bill is like, oh, and he's like, oh my god, we rescued a racist. And she's like, no, but like,
look at me.
Trust me, I know, but look at me. And he's like, what? So yeah, I'm not a big fan of that trope, right? But can we do something to indicate to people that these are aliens? Because that would make it a lot more clear.
Or maybe that's the point, to have us questioning if they are or aren't, giving us reasonable doubt.
Yeah, that is interesting because they actually have, and this might get important later, they have pulled our attention to the fact that these are humanoid creatures but they're not humans twice by discussing specifically anatomy. About, is the vena cava located on the same part of the body on humans as they are on our people, and also about the X-ray blanket showing different organs on the Miss Belinda Chandrans, the humans. And I actually remember thinking when I was watching the first episode that was an interesting addition. I sort of thought that the reason they did the X-ray blankets was to show the Doctor's 2 hearts, but it didn't seem like that was justification enough to actually mention the detail about the different organ, because that is never used again in that episode. So it must be...
They used the same medical fluids as well on this planet as they did for the Belinda Chandrans, yeah.
They do, so this must be related to something that's gonna come back. It has to be, because otherwise that's such a weird detail to add for no reason.
Yeah, we're flagging that for later on, for sure.
We're flagging this for later on. This is going to be related, trust us. Now, the Earth being gone, obviously it's a great mystery. It's super scary to feel like your home planet is disappearing. And I also think it adds an extra layer of fear around every situation that the Doctor and Belinda end up in, because you're always scared of her not being able to return home. It kind of reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, of like being on a spaceship and suddenly realizing that your entire home is gone. Like that's a separate layer of existential crisis, I think. So I really like that plot point. I think it's interesting, and it's going to be fun to know what it is. My theory is that they're actually going to bring back the Master, and the reason why I think that is because I recently rewatched the episode with the Celestial Toymaker, and of course he killed the Master and made him into a gold tooth. And at the end of that episode, the gold tooth is still on the platform, and it must be Maestro that takes the gold tooth. Some hand with very long acrylic nails takes the gold tooth. So the Master is canonically in this universe and mentioned, so they must bring the Master back. I'm 100% sure there's going to be the Master, and if it isn't the Master, I owe you $1 billion.
I'm betting you the same amount so that we're even if that turns out to be right, because now that you mention it, it makes perfect sense. Because why would they show that gold tooth in the 60th anniversary episode if they didn't mean to bring it back?
My theory is that Belinda is going... In the finale episode, there's going to be a character that's injured, and Belinda is going to have to take care of them. And in the process, she'll find out that that character has 2 hearts, and it's going to be the Master.
Ooh.
And that's how they will tie everything together. They'll tie the organs together, the liquids together, and the Master together. That's my theory. And
I think so.
I think that's a good prediction.
I like that. And it's also going to be a 2-parter, so they definitely have time to plant in nuggets like that. Oh, yeah, I mentioned how they use the Sonic. earlier, but also I like that they bring back the psychic paper the way it used to be, and I am a big fan of this the monster of the week formula of using these readily available tools. They use the psychic paper, they use the sonic, and it has its very limited purposes, but it's a staple. I like that. I like the structure of everything being the same a little bit, and then for another point, this is a very classical stuck on a space base episode, of course. And I mentioned I thought it was really nice to have all these callbacks. It feels very rewarding as a fan to be like, oh, that feels like Turn Left. Oh, that feels like Midnight, and it turned out to be Midnight. And they use the same track as they do in The End of the World, which now that I think of it, the episode name, The End of the World, is that like a thematical plant to the fact that Earth is ending on May 24th? I don't know. But another RTD episode that I was most reminded of with this episode, I don't know if this is only me, but I'm probably not gonna be the other one. I thought this episode reminded me a lot of Waters of Mars. We're down to the space base running at the end, the pilot or captain sacrificing themselves, and of course in Waters of Mars they don't have this plot of mutiny, and the Doctor actually saves the crew, some of the people of the crew, although they still commit suicide by the end. So we still have this self-sacrificing thing, and the mystery of what is this exactly, even though the crew realizes that something is up, but we don't figure it out. I think it's thematically really similar to Waters of Mars.
I think it's similar to like every single episode that is one of like not only critically acclaimed but also like my personal favorites. But it also just speaks to the strength of Stuck on a Space Base episodes, especially the ones where something has been uncovered and this thing could be really dangerous if it's let out and it needs to be contained. That theme is, I don't know why it is so effective, it just is. It really puts so much dread on the people, and it always inspires these stories of self-sacrifice. It reminds me also a lot of Midnight. At the end of the episode, the hostess jumps out into the extonic atmosphere to save everyone. So it's very reminiscent of some of Doctor Who's greatest hits, but it doesn't feel repetitive. It just feels like it pays homage to some of the best stuff that modern Doctor Who ever did. Waters of Mars is an excellent example. That is like one of the most beloved specials ever. It's such a memorable story, and it has all of those aspects that I just mentioned. It has an enclosed space, it has a crew that's being infected, it has this feeling of like self-sacrifice and of containing something that could be really dangerous if it got out into the wider world. Yeah, I got transported back into that feeling that all of those big hits used to give me, and I'm ecstatic. Like, what can I say? We were really talking a lot about in the last episode that the Mr. Ring-a-Ding episode wasn't really our vibe. This episode is really our vibe. Like, this is really what we like in our Doctor Who.
Another thing we also mentioned last episode, that they avoid going down like tired tropes. However, in this episode, I feel like they utilized the good parts instead of avoiding the bad parts. They took these tried and proven and beloved formulas and they just play on the good beats.
Yeah, exactly.
This feels unrelated, but on the point of being formulaic, I feel like we're developing this new Doctor Who meta of starting the episode with Belinda and the Doctor in the TARDIS, and then getting to know each other, making like exposition about the season, and then jumping into a mystery with a Vindicator. We're developing a new formula.
And I think that's clever. I think it's good to define the season, and I think especially when you have such few episodes, having one very clear plot line of we want to get home. Both the Doctor and Belinda are united in this desire to bring her back, and we have the Vindicator plot. We know that we're going to have to land at least one more time to calibrate the Vindicator, and after that maybe they'll be able to land. We'll see. Like, I think
it was just a new structure that I noticed.
Yeah. And it's I think it's a way for Russell T Davies to not only make this season feel distinct, but also to set up the stakes every episode. And me personally, I love when a show kind of gets into a comfy rhythm, is able to create conflict and chaos within that comfy rhythm.
Exactly that.
Rather than breaking rules all the time and ending the universe all the time. And like, I think it's nice to have that sort of framing. It has a standard, like, just as the last season had Susan Triad in every episode, this time we get Miss Flood in every episode, often at the end. And we also start every episode with the Doctor and Belinda talking about having to calibrate the Vindicator and having to take her home. So on the topic of Mrs. Flood, I'm not sure if I like her inclusion. I mean, obviously she's scary, but it just seems a bit too similar to the way Susan Triad was in every episode last time. Only this time the characters don't actually interact with her. She kind of stays hidden and she's more for our benefit. I just don't know if I like the same thing being done again right after it was just being done. Like, I'm not sure about that.
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely puts me off a little bit too.
It's just a bit too similar, I feel like. And also, I don't know that Mrs. Flood, I mean, I think she's really funny. I just wish that Russell T Davies would have chosen to do that either in season 1 or in season 2.
Not twice.
Yeah, not twice after one another. It seems a bit too derivative of what you literally just did. So that's my only comment on her. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I don't really know. Now that you've introduced this, we're gonna reveal the Master. Of course, our thoughts go back to, is this a Time Lord of some sorts? But I don't, yeah.
Yeah, because last episode you discussed your theory about her being related to the Timeless Child plot.
Which I really hope it's not gonna be the case. The more I think of it, but maybe never say never. I actually haven't really reflected a lot on Mrs. Flood's inclusion in this episode. Maybe I wasn't as ecstatic about her inclusion in the end of this episode as I was in the last one. I felt the last one was a lot more natural, like we were kind of expecting her to be there, and then she shows up and it's like, of course. With the video call in this, it felt a little bit contrived.
Well, because previously when they've showed Mrs. Flood, she's been a bystander or a neighbor or like an innocuous character, but this time they make her the leader of some organization, some military organization
that we haven't heard about for this whole episode.
And it's complicated, right? Because there are so many mystery box plot lines and so many running things that they've established. Like we have the Vanguard, for instance, who are mentioned both in Mundy Flynn's episode Boom and also mentioned in Joy to the World.
And the Doctor also speaks a lot in the last episode of like, yeah, I was an orphan too. Like, it seems to be way too much to resolve in these upcoming 5 episodes.
I'm scared that there's not going to be any way to resolve her mystery satisfactorily, just because like I'm trying to think of every single resolution that I can imagine and none of them seem that exciting. And also simply leaving it unanswered to what she is or who she is would also be kind of dull.
But it would be very similar to The Impossible Planet, Satan's Pit. They don't resolve that one.
Right, and funnily enough, they bring Sutek back, and they bring Sutek back with the same voice actor who did both Sutek and the Beast. They call Sutek the Beast explicitly in the show. Remember, Ruby's stepmother says, "I know what it is, it's the Beast." And since it's the same performer who performs it in a very similar way, it's kind of implied that they're the same character. But I've always hoped that they will actually literally bring in the Beast, because that would just be fun, because I love the Beast and it's one of the campiest things Doctor Who ever did. Well, so what I'm hoping is that they'll bring back the Master, because obviously I always love when they bring back the Master, and I hope it's going to be sort of what I was explaining. I'm just not that excited about how Mrs. Flood is going to fit into everything. Obviously I hope that she's not the Master, because that wouldn't make any sense. Maybe she'll regenerate the same way Yana did from Utopia.
Right. Yeah, no, that was really fun, but I also have this, when they did Professor Yana, they took kind of a long time establishing that with the Face of Bo, with the Fog Watch. They did work over like several seasons to make that happen. So maybe.
Well, I don't think it's going to be, because I don't think Mrs. Flood has been teased as a Time Lord, and it could be sort of like how we had that running mystery box in Amy's seasons of the lady with the eye patch, that she's just sort of part of some organization that is cued in to the goings on of the Doctor. But I will say that those are typically the reveals that I dislike the most. Like the whole business with the silence, it was another issue in Doctor Who where you had a lot of build-up, a lot of mystery, and then when it came to the reveal, it just sucked ass. Like, it wasn't interesting at all.
I feel a little called out.
That's why this Mrs. Flood character kind of annoys me. Why do you feel called out?
I feel a bit called out because I really liked the idea of the silence up until they revealed it, and you're so right that it's really fun to build up, but then I didn't actually like the resolution of it. But I keep deluding myself that I did like it because I like the build up to it.
Yeah, well, the Silence is an excellent villain, and silence will fall when the da-da-da-da-da, like all of that is fun, right? But then the actual resolution episodes, but that's the thing that was our biggest problem with Moffat's run, was teasing stuff and then not being able to reveal it in an impactful way. Like the build-up is the fun part, the foreplay, so to speak, was more fun than the climax. About the ending of this episode, the only thing of note is, I guess, that the entity actually manages to escape. I think that was a clever...
Yeah!
It was
I
fun.
like that too!
I'm not sure if that means that we're going to get this villain as like a recurring villain, or if it's just meant to be like, ooh, scary, it escaped, woo.
I'm gonna say something that I've said several times before, but I really hope they don't bring it back. I think it's more fun that it's just a loose entity somewhere. It's looming. It makes the universe feel a bit more rich, yeah. And then like the world building is more vast when we know what to fear about it too. Like, because space is really scary. It's not just pretty stars and planets. Like, it will literally kill you, and I think it adds to the world immersion. I feel like that's becoming my regular take. It's fine if they don't bring it back.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you, except that my brain started writing fan fiction again. And what if, oh my god, because this I would actually find interesting, and you can let me know if this is stupid or not. What if the entity is let out? Because remember, 400,000 years have passed since we saw it first, and since its reappearance in this episode. What if another million years pass?
Yeah.
And the entity becomes like an actual god, aka perhaps Sutek? Or perhaps the Beast?
But then they would have to also banish it to another universe first to actually have it come back through the edge of the universe, if that is what they're implying in the throwaway line in Why Blue Yonder.
No, you're right. So maybe it isn't one of the banished entities such as Sutek or the Beast, because the Beast was also... It could be something else. It could be some other type of god. It would be fun, I think, if like...
If it's the Harbinger Lab! It could be... I don't remember if...
That was just the giggle.
But the giggle... We know about the Midnight Entity that it's bored and it wants to have fun. Like, that's why it's playing with people and killing people for entertainment.
What I mean. That's similar.
Like a natural progression.
Vendela, what about... imagine this. The entity gets shoved back into the well, but it isn't. It manages to escape. What if the entity manages to escape the reality and create its own pocket universe?
Okay.
Where it starts playing tricks and it has its own laws in the universe, and then it sort of matures and grows into a certain character.
It listens through the walls like they do in Midnight.
Mm-hmm. And it sort of evolves into a character that we know as the Toymaker!
Maybe, I don't know.
They could do something like that, and maybe I wouldn't be that pissed off about it. Maybe I would kind of be excited. I don't know.
It could be very hard to bring that forward in one episode, but I'm not opposed to the idea in of itself.
Like, when I say it out loud, it does sound very stupid, and the entity and the toy maker are obviously very different. I'm just saying that they could do something special with it, but I think that you might be right that preferably we just leave it to be a loose world-building thread out in the universe and not necessarily a recurring villain.
Yeah, because if we have to put it in a blender and bake it for an hour, I feel like we're doing too much to make it work. But this is also why we're not showrunners of Doctor Who. Speaking of showrunners of Doctor Who, I feel like we've been shit talking Stephen Moffat a lot, and I want to make clear that we don't hate everything Stephen Moffat does. There is some show writing formulas that he uses that become very tired, and they're really easy to dunk down on, which we do with regularity and without shame. But it's not that it's inherently bad, it's more also kind of a joke. Looking at the Super Wholock fandom, it really encouraged weird type of behavior of fanfictionizing everything, and that is what we call back to. But to break character, I'm gonna actually mention, I thought it was really cute that Stephen Moffat mentioned on his Instagram that this is ending the superiority, like he's handing over the crown of Blink being a favorite episode to this episode. I thought that was very cute.
I love it when showrunners respect each other. I think that especially Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat have a really cute back and forth and kind of play feud, and that really shows itself in the actual episodes, which I think is fun. Like, they put in a lot of nods to each other.
I really liked the overlap of like season 4 when Russell T Davies knew that Stephen Moffat was coming into the show, and I think it was a really golden era of Doctor Who show writing.
Some of my favorite Doctor Who episodes, and some of the most critically acclaimed Doctor Who episodes, are episodes that Stephen Moffat have written under Russell T Davies as showrunner, right? And that makes me think of Boom, that makes me think of Joy to the World, episodes that I loved so much that are written by Stephen Moffat under Russell T Davies as a showrunner. I just think that's a magic combination, and I love having that back. Like, obviously, both you and me were concerned that bringing back the same showrunner would just lead to derivative stuff, it would be tired, and having new blood into the show would be advantageous in the long run, but we can't lie and pretend like the Chibnall era was successful. I mean, it's obviously sad that a show has to revert all of its evolution in order to get good again or to get popular again. And listen, both me and Vendela are not Chibnall haters. We have to make an entire episodes about, like, I personally like Chibnall's era better than some of Stephen Moffat's stuff.
I feel like it's our girly duty to to make that episode happen.
We have to make a full episode dedicated to our opinions on that entire era. Probably will come out after this season's completion, because it will require us to rewatch the entire era, and
it'll require us to think.
I think my concluding thought is simply that even though ideally you want new stuff in Doctor Who, it can't be underestimated how happy I get to have this many callbacks to iconic stuff and have it be done very, very well.
And I love iconic shit.
So do I. And I think that so far, I think this season so far has been a good balance of a lot of new stuff and a lot of old classic themes that are being brought back. And hopefully that will lead to maybe some inclusion of Cybermen or Daleks in the future. We'll see. But as we stand now, I think there's a good balance of callbacks and fresh takes on the show.
Yeah. And I haven't had my big feared aversion moment of they're bringing back the Cybermen and now I feel violated. So it's an A+ on that front. Maybe a bit harsh, but I have a question. So I mentioned that I screamed twice during my watch of this episode. Did I mention that the first time was the same time that you sent me your voice notes? Can you guess what the other one was? It's a bit of a trick question, actually.
Trick question. So there are some big moments in the episode, right? So is it before or after the midnight reveal?
After. I want to see like if you have any moments that you want to like point out to, because maybe that's also interesting.
Well, obviously there's the big moment of Belinda realizing that she can hear the entity whispering and thinking that it's behind her. It was a good moment, but it was kind of predictable. Like it's a typical thing that the companion is the one who's in danger and somebody else has to sacrifice themselves for the companion. That's kind of normal Doctor Who stuff. Okay, so, well, I know another moment that I felt was pretty iconic and kind of goofy, and it's when the platoon leader starts running and it looks super goofy. It's actually really funny when she's running to get to the well to jump in and like kill herself, essentially. I remember going, "Wah!" It was unfortunately quite funny looking.
You're so right. It kind of threw out the emotion for me too. No, actually, this is such a mean question because it was actually after the episode.
What?
You know, actually, when they previewed the next episode, when they showed that Ruby is coming back.
I love Ruby.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have her come back into the show. I'm so happy that they're not abandoning companions. What was the golden era of Doctor Who, and like what did they do right? And bringing back companions was like one of my favorite tropes. So I'm so happy that they're doing that.
We recently actually on a phone call talked about how much we like Ruby and how much she's grown on us. At least that's my experience, that Ruby, I mean, I liked her, but I wasn't super in love with her the first time I watched the season. But going back and rewatching, the bond between the Doctor and Ruby, how lonely he is after her leaving, but also some of the emotional beats of that season that involve Ruby are really, really effective. And I mean, obviously Belinda kind of clears her immediately. I think Belinda's a way better companion, but Ruby is obviously also amazing.
Millie is such a good actor too.
She is, and bringing her back is iconic. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like the episode because it seems kind of goofy, like alien boyfriend.
Are you thinking a bit The Power of Three vibes?
Hopefully better, but it seems a little bit domestic and a little bit my boyfriend is an alien?
Knock on wood, but I feel like maybe we need one of those domestic episodes. Like,
obviously we like Ruby, we're excited about that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be cautiously excited and be let down once we get to the episode if it turns out to be bad, but
because I feel like every season needs to have a domestic episode. Every season needs to have one episode set on Earth that is a little bit more homely, and we bring back some old characters and we have a cozy time, and it's kind of scary.
It's good for the formula. Also, this is gonna be the first episode where RTD was not part of the writing.
That's exciting. So hopefully that means it's gonna be a little bit fresh and a little bit new. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Impossible Podcast. Once again, we have been tinkering, trying to save the space base because it is currently being sucked into a black hole. But hopefully we will survive long enough to cover this entire season, and hopefully some stuff after that.
And if you think we were wrong about our comments on the Midnight Entity, please let us know. We wanna have all the input on what we forgot to consider.
Yes, and also if you have any crackpot theories like I did in this episode, leave them in the comment section below. We would love to hear.
Maybe we can all write our own season's finale before the finale comes out.
Maybe, and we'll see who got it mostly right. Also, we would like to thank you so much for 400 views in our first episode and for 13 subscribers.
That's insane.
The reason we made this podcast is to spread the good word and to make people excited about this era of the show because we love it so much.
That was a good thing, I think. Now I'm not making sense anymore. Cool.
I decided to put him on this plant.
So cute.
Well, not really. He's kind of ugly.
Wait, I have to just say before we move on so I can insert.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Exactly that. Okay, thank you. That was